The wind howled like a wounded animal through the empty streets of downtown Chicago, carrying snowflakes that cut through the December air like tiny razors. Most people had retreated to the warmth of their homes hours ago, but Marcus Thompson couldn't afford that luxury. His beat-up Honda Civic coughed and wheezed as he navigated the treacherous roads, returning from his third job of the day, a late-night security shift that barely paid enough to keep the lights on in his cramped one-bedroom apartment. At 34, Marcus looked older than his years. The lines around his eyes told the story of countless sleepless nights spent worrying about his 8-year-old son, Tyler, who was currently staying with Marcus's elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. She never asked for payment, understanding that Marcus was doing everything humanly possible to provide for his boy after Tyler's mother had walked out on them 2 years ago, leaving behind nothing but empty promises and a pile of unpaid bills. As Marcus turned onto 5th Street, his headlights caught something that made his heart skip a beat. Huddled against the concrete steps of an abandoned office building were two small figures, children, no more than 6 or 7 years old, pressed together for warmth. Their thin clothes were soaked through, and their lips had turned an alarming shade of blue. Without hesitation, Marcus pulled over and jumped out of his car, his work boots slipping on the icy sidewalk. "Hey there," he called softly, not wanting to frighten them. "Are you okay?" The older girl, who couldn't have been more than 7, wrapped her arms protectively around what appeared to be her younger sister. Her dark eyes were wide with fear, but there was a fierce determination in them that reminded Marcus of his own son. "We're fine, mister," she whispered, though her voice shook from cold and terror. "Sweetheart, you're not fine," Marcus said gently, crouching down to their level. "It's freezing out here. Where are your parents?" The younger girl, perhaps 5 years old, began to cry, silent tears that froze on her cheeks almost instantly. The older sister pulled her closer. "Mama said she'd be back," she said, though the words seemed rehearsed, as if she'd been repeating them to herself for hours. "She just went to get medicine for Emma's cough." Marcus felt his chest tighten. He recognized the look in these children's eyes, the same confusion and abandonment he'd seen in Tyler's face when his mother left. "What are your names?" he asked. "I'm Sophia, and this is Emma," the older girl replied, her small hand smoothing her sister's matted hair with a tenderness that broke Marcus's heart. "Well, Sophia and Emma, I'm Marcus. And I think we need to get you somewhere warm right now." He looked around the deserted street, knowing that calling social services at this hour would mean these girls spending the night in an emergency shelter, separated and scared. "Would you like to come with me? I have hot chocolate and blankets, and my son Tyler has some clothes that might fit you." Sophia hesitated, every instinct telling her not to trust strangers. But Emma's violent shivering made the decision for her. She nodded slowly. Marcus carefully lifted both girls, one in each arm, and carried them to his car. They weighed almost nothing, their small bodies trembling against his chest. As he buckled them into the backseat, he noticed their hands, red and raw from the cold, with dirt under their fingernails that spoke of days spent fending for themselves. The drive to his apartment complex took 20 minutes through the storm. Marcus kept talking softly, telling them about Tyler, about Mrs. Rodriguez's famous hot tamales, about anything he could think of to keep them calm. In his rearview mirror, he watched Emma fall asleep against Sophia's shoulder, while Sophia remained vigilantly awake, her eyes darting between Marcus and the unfamiliar streets outside. Mrs. Rodriguez was waiting when they arrived, having seen them through her window. The 70-year-old woman took one look at the girls and immediately sprang into action, gathering towels and preparing warm baths while Marcus found some of Tyler's old clothes. Tyler, awakened by the commotion, stood in his pajamas staring at the two shivering girls with the solemn understanding that only children who've known hardship can possess. "They can sleep in my bed," Tyler announced without being asked. "I'll take the couch." Over the next 3 days, Marcus tried everything he could to find the girl's mother or any family members. He filed missing persons reports, contacted local hospitals, and even posted on social media. But deep down, he suspected what Sophia was too young to understand: their mother wasn't coming back. What Marcus didn't know was that his simple act of kindness had set in motion a chain of events that would change all their lives forever. The missing persons report had been flagged by the Chicago Police Department's Special Victims Unit, which forwarded it to the Department of Children and Family Services. From there, it made its way to the desk of Amanda Chen, the newly appointed CEO of Midwest Children's Alliance, one of the largest child welfare organizations in the country. Amanda had built her career on data and efficiency, transforming struggling nonprofits into streamlined operations that could help more children with fewer resources. At 39, she was considered a rising star in the nonprofit world, known for her sharp business acumen and ability to increase funding through corporate partnerships. She had never married, never had children, and prided herself on making decisions based on logic rather than emotion. But something about this particular case nagged at her. Maybe it was the way the police report described how the children had been found, or perhaps it was the social worker's notes about the family that had taken them in. Against her usual protocol, Amanda decided to make a personal visit. She arrived at Marcus's apartment on a gray Thursday afternoon, expecting to conduct a routine inspection and facilitate the girl's placement in appropriate foster care. She had reviewed Marcus's file: single father, multiple jobs, living paycheck to paycheck in a one-bedroom apartment. By every metric her organization used, this was not an ideal environment for additional children. Marcus opened the door wearing his security guard uniform, having just returned from his morning shift. His eyes were red-rimmed from exhaustion, but his smile was genuine. "Ms. Chen, thank you for coming. The girls are just finishing lunch." Amanda followed him into the small apartment, her practiced eye cataloging every detail. The furniture was old but clean, toys were neatly organized in a small basket, and the smell of something delicious wafted from the tiny kitchen. She could hear children's laughter coming from what she assumed was the bedroom. "Tyler, Sophia, Emma, come meet Ms. Chen," Marcus called. 3 children emerged, Tyler with his gap-toothed grin, Sophia with her protective stance, and little Emma hiding shyly behind her sister. But what stopped Amanda in her tracks wasn't the children's appearance, though they looked healthy and well cared for. It was the way they moved together as a unit, the way Tyler automatically took Emma's hand, the way Sophia looked to Marcus for reassurance. "We made pictures," Emma announced suddenly, her shyness overcome by excitement. She thrust a crumpled piece of paper toward Amanda. It was a crayon drawing of 4 stick figures holding hands in front of a house, with "My Family" written across the top in Tyler's careful second-grade handwriting. Amanda studied the drawing, noting that Emma had drawn herself with curly hair like Sophia's, and that all 4 figures were smiling. In the corner, barely visible, was a 5th figure, much smaller and fainter, standing apart from the group. When Amanda looked closer, she could make out the word, "Mama," with an arrow pointing to the lonely figure. "That's beautiful, Emma," Amanda said softly, her professional composure beginning to crack. Over the next hour, Amanda conducted her standard interview with Marcus. She learned about his struggles to make ends meet, his fears about providing adequate space for 3 children, his dreams of going back to school to become a teacher someday. She also learned about the small miracles, how Mrs. Rodriguez had organized the other neighbors to donate clothes and toys, how Marcus's boss at the security company had offered him additional hours, how the girls' traumatic nightmares had gradually been replaced by peaceful sleep. "I know this isn't ideal," Marcus said quietly as the children played in the bedroom. "I know they deserve better than this tiny apartment and a dad who's always working. But Ms. Chen, I love these girls like they're my own. And I think they love us too." Amanda found herself blinking back tears, an emotional response that caught her completely off guard. In 15 years of child welfare work, she had maintained professional distance, making decisions based on policies and procedures. But sitting in this cramped apartment, watching a man who had almost nothing give everything he had to children who weren't even his own, she felt something shift inside her chest. "Mr. Thompson," she said carefully, "what you've done for Sophia and Emma is remarkable. But providing permanent care for 3 children requires resources that—" She stopped mid-sentence as Sophia appeared in the doorway, Emma's small hand clutched in hers. "Ms. Chen," Sophia said with the gravity of someone much older, "are you going to take us away from Marcus and Tyler?" The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Amanda looked at this 7-year-old girl who had already experienced more loss than many adults, who had somehow found the courage to trust again, who was now preparing to fight for the only stability she'd ever known. "Sophia," Amanda began, but the words wouldn't come. She was supposed to say something about appropriate placements and resource availability. Instead, she found herself thinking about her own childhood, the cold efficiency of the group homes, the longing for someone to choose her, to fight for her, to love her unconditionally. Amanda excused herself and stepped outside, pulling out her phone with trembling hands. She called her assistant, her board members, her most generous donors. She made promises she hoped she could keep and called in favors she'd been saving for years. By the time she returned to Marcus's apartment, she had set in motion a plan that would either save her career or end it. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, "how would you feel about becoming an official foster parent? And what would you say if I told you that Midwest Children's Alliance was prepared to provide housing assistance, childcare support, and a college scholarship fund?" Marcus stared at her as if she'd spoken in a foreign language. What does that mean?" "It means," Amanda said, looking directly at Sophia and Emma, "that families aren't just made by blood. Sometimes they're made by choice. And sometimes, when we're very lucky, an organization like mine gets to help make those choices possible." 6 months later, Amanda found herself sitting in the backyard of a modest 3-bedroom house, watching Marcus push Emma on a swing while Sophia and Tyler raced through sprinklers. The house was a rental property owned by one of her board members, offered at a rate Marcus could afford with his new job as a youth counselor, a position Amanda had helped him obtain after he completed an accelerated certification program. The legal adoption wouldn't be finalized for another year, but the girls had stopped asking about their mother's return. They had found something more valuable than the fantasy of a parent who might come back. They had found a father who would never leave. Amanda had changed too. The sterile efficiency that once defined her leadership style had been replaced by something warmer, more human. She found herself making decisions with her heart as much as her head, and somehow, her organization was thriving more than ever. Donors who had never cared about individual stories were now fighting to fund programs that kept families together. As the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Amanda watched Marcus gather his children, all 3 of them, for dinner. Sophia ran to him first, followed by Emma, with Tyler bringing up the rear, all of them talking at once about their day. In that moment, Amanda understood something she had never grasped in all her years of professional training. Sometimes the most profound changes happen not through policy or procedure, but through the simple decision of one person to see another person's need and say, "I can help." The wind that had once carried the thread of winter now brought the promise of spring. And in a little house on the south side of Chicago, a family that had been forged in the coldest night of the year was proof that love, like the seasons, has the power to transform everything it touches.